All right, let's get our Facebook folks in here. We can start the show. Oh man, we got the wheels spinning here on the show. Maybe not up in the upstairs there in the attic, but there we go. Yeah, I got to swing my ball around, right? I'm wearing the Santa hat for those listening. I have to bring it out in December, and then the week of Christmas, I'll rock the Broncos Christmas sweatshirt as well. But welcome in. It is time for an episode of Building the Broncos for Breakfast. Carl has obligations, so Scott's here again. Scott, I'm never tired of seeing your face. I'm gonna see you again tomorrow. How you doing? How's your Tuesday going?
That's hard to believe. I'm tired of seeing me. No, I usually intro these shows when I've been filling in a lot is like in the immortal words of Korn, it's me again.
Well, we're happy to have you here filling in. I could have gone solo today, but it's just so much more enjoyable doing the shows. Of course, I always love the chat. I know I'm never truly alone in here. Along with the voices in my head, we have the chat as well. David Youngkin's in the house. Hope he's doing well. He says, David, Denver's playoff hopes are not guaranteed. They have to take care of business. Yeah, it's crazy, Scott. The playoff probabilities of the Broncos, if they beat the Colts, it's almost all but guaranteed. If they lose to the Colts, though, the Colts jump them, and the Colts have it's like SEC scheduling non-conference games. It's like they played the Jags, the Titans, and somebody else that's just dreadful.
Welcome to the South.
Yeah, yeah, it is unbelievable. So I know that a lot of people are not maybe hyping this Colts Broncos game up enough, but I think it was Nate Tice mentioned it. This is coming into a loser leaves town kind of game based on how easy the Colts schedule is and how hard the Broncos is.
And that's part of it is I think the Broncos are significantly better than the Colts. I think there's a pretty good gap there, and there's a 2-game gap, and that's fairly significant in the NFL. But if the Colts are good enough to come into Denver and beat Denver, then they can run the table. It's like this is by far the hardest game left on their schedule. So if they can, and I don't think they will, but if they can win this one, then it changes the way the rest of their stuff looks. But if they lose, they're eliminated for the most part. Because they couldn't catch Denver, but then Baltimore and or the Chargers would have to fall flat on their faces, and the Colts would have to win out. And the likelihood of that happening is about 0.
Yeah, dare I say, Scott, this is the most important Broncos game we've had since Super Bowl 50. As far as the stakes in the game, and obviously like last year, there was like an outside chance if you beat the Patriots and whatnot, you choke and whatnot. But the playoff probability swing for a win and a loss in this game is huge. And then you play a Cincinnati game, which if you flip all the one-score games this season, they're one of the best teams in football. I don't know if you've seen that graphic out there. The Chiefs are the worst team in the AFC if you flip all the one-score games. And
the one I keep checking, Nick, is I keep looking at their strength of schedule, and it's in the 20s. I'm like, how is that possible? Look at the teams they've lost to. They're all playoff teams.
Yeah.
So I don't think their schedule is nearly. I think it's a lot harder than the numbers might say based on the teams that they've played and still have to play.
Yeah, but as NFL.com, they put out an article today. If the Broncos win against the Colts, right now Broncos sit at a 75% chance to make the playoffs, according to NFL.com. That's great. If they beat the Colts, it's pretty much, nothing's guaranteed until you're in, right? I've seen too much chaos happen in sports. That's why we love it, but also it can be heartbreaking. But if they beat the Colts, 91%. If they lose, it's a 51%. Where the Colts, they're sitting there at 25 right now. They win, they jump up to 51. They lose, 6%. So obviously this isn't a.
I would take the under on that. I think it's more like 0.6% if they lose.
Yeah, I think the only chance would be jumping the Chargers actually, because the Broncos.
Right, because that's why I said the Broncos. They cannot catch the Broncos. So like the Ravens or the Chargers would have to lose out, and then the Colts would have to win out if they lose this game, and that's not happening. One of them might, but both of them aren't.
Yeah, it's just a. Concerning if the Broncos lose this one. So this is, again, I come back to it. Chad, you guys let me know. Is this the biggest Broncos game we've had since Super Bowl 50? Because Denver has not had many. Maybe in 2016 where they just barely missed the playoffs. But this is a huge game for Denver. And like I said earlier, a loser leaves town kind of matchup. Not a loser and hopefully never leaving town. Papa Bear, David Mickelrath coming in here saying, good evening, Broncos country, Nick, Carl, and Deacon Scott. Hashtag 10 and 7. I'm liking that. I'm liking that a lot. He says, let's go, Bo, MHH for life. Buckham 3 times. Denver Broncos for life. Yeah, Scott, right now, we're going to be back alive tomorrow morning again as well. But as the Broncos, 4 more games left, what would you set their win total at over these final 4 games? So obviously, we got
10 and a half. I mean, it's funny. It's David, the 10-7 now looks like pessimistic.
2-2. I think that's most probable.
I do, but it's also, when we started, it was 0-2. David, I don't remember if you still had 10-7 or if it was like 11-6 it was up or whatnot. But, after that 0-2 start, you said this team was going to finish 10-7. I would have said, well, I probably did say you're out of your mind. And now 10-7 feels, again, probable. Yeah. So, I would set the win total at 10.5 because I think they'll win 10. They might win 11. They might win 12. But I think they win 10. So I would set it at 10.5 and then take your bet there. Which do you want? You want the 11 or do you want the 10?
Yeah, I think they'll go 10-7. So that would, I guess I take the under. Does that make me a hater? I've doubted them so far and they've made me look foolish. So hopefully I continue to look more foolish than I already do wearing the Santa hat here. But in how many of those games, Scott, we already know the Broncos total, but how many would you expect them to be underdogs in? You have the Chargers game on the road, you got the Bengals game on the road, and you got the Chiefs at home. Granted, that Week 18 game, Chiefs could be not playing starters, which would totally change that.
So I would say right now you're only an underdog on the road at Chargers because everybody's going to figure out that the Chiefs aren't playing anybody. They're resting Week 18. But you can be an underdog too if you play Underdog Fantasy. Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. Join over 5 million fans who are already playing on Underdog. With their Pick'em game, you could win money by making entries with your favorite players. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more players' stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog.
With Underdog's Champs game, you can win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on a player's stats such as passing yards, interceptions, touchdowns, and much more. Like, for example, Nick Bonito, higher or lower, half a sack, 1.5 sacks. He's been on a heater. I wouldn't bet against him. Every dog deserves a second chance, and with the Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose.
So download the Underdog app today and use code MHuddle to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Bonus cash. Again, download the Underdog app today and use our code MHuddle to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every touchdown. Just select higher or lower on Underdog.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Keeping it rolling here. So it'll be really interesting with the Broncos here down the stretch. I'm picking them to go 2-2, but this Colts game, this is the must-win one. I think if you could pick any of them, now that the Cincinnati Bengals odds are very slim, the next 2 games are probably the most important out of the 4. But Denver controls everything, and they have a little bit of margin. So that's great to see as well. For the Broncos, of course, we got Stard coming in here. David Cramello as well. We got our Davids coming in today. Says if the Colts win and the Texans lose Sunday, Indy can win the AFC South. 2 of the Texans' final 3 games are brutal. Yeah, that must also be some of the Colts' probability in there as well. Oh, we got some colors on here, Scott.
There's
I don't know.
Got to be a reason I kept this chart from the beginning of the season. So we've got Indianapolis right here, and you can't quite see this, but they finish at Denver, Tennessee at home, at 2-11 New York Giants, and then Jacksonville again. So terrible. I think you're looking at 8 wins right now from the Denver Broncos, and then 7 combined wins possibly the rest of the way. Jacksonville might have 3 too, so it might be 8 wins combined the rest of the way. And then if you look at Houston, talking about Houston, not Houston right now, but if you look at Houston Texans, they go Miami, at Kansas City, Baltimore, and then at Tennessee. So theirs is significantly tougher. So this is, as big as this game is, David, for the Denver Broncos, I agree with you. It's even bigger. It's even bigger for the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah. It's a big one for them. I don't know if I can trust them, but anything can happen in any game, and they're a fine team. But they might be saying the same exact thing about the Broncos. So we'll see what happens here. Denver just needs to take care of business. And I think that coming off a bye week, everything happening here, who do I trust out of the player or out of these teams' coaching staffs? I think Steichen's a good coach. He's not Sean Payton. That's the thing that helping me sleep at night.
For me, I really like Steichen, but to me, if you want to do that, the Broncos defense is considerably better, and Bo Nix is better than Anthony Richardson. I trust the quarterback and the defense on the Denver Broncos, and it's at home. I mean, it's all leading. Yeah. There's a reason why the Broncos are favored in this one.
4.5. Yep. We got Ralph coming in here saying, my son Gene and I are hoping we get Kansas City round 1. I don't think they can stop us. MHH Buckham. Thank you so much, Ralph, over there on Facebook. We also got Michael over on Facebook, says, good evening, Nick and Scott on Building the Broncos. I mean, for me, it seems obvious. If you could pick any of the divisional winners round 1, you're hoping Houston. They are extremely erratic. Their interior of their offensive line is dreadful. They do have probably the best edge rush duo in football right now, but I think the rest of the defense is a little bit erratic. So
they got Daniil, right?
They got Hunter and they got Will Anderson.
They got Daniil Hunter and then they have Will Anderson there. So
and they got Derek Stingley, who's also incredible as well. They got pieces, but I feel like that's just the worst team, especially their offense. I know that. Oh gosh, who's their offensive coordinator? He was a hot shot, but he hasn't had other answers this season. They can't really design the run game. Everything is like, okay, CJ Stroud, bail us out. And he can sometimes, but that's not a recipe for winning. Give your guys some easy buttons, your young quarterback. So I don't think CJ Stroud's bad. He's regressed from last year, but I think you can explain away a lot of it around him. But I'd rather have Houston round 1 than any of these teams. Obviously, I do think Kansas City's vulnerable. I'd rather the least out of the opponents. I think Kansas City would be the 4th one I want the least. I don't want to go to Buffalo. I don't want to go to Baltimore. I think I'd rather, God, Scott, I don't know. Would you rather go to Kansas City or Pittsburgh? Those are like tied for me.
I think you'd rather go to Pittsburgh. I mean, frankly, I don't want to see, especially early, if you play your way into it, fine. I don't want to see round 3. I mean, a rematch is bad enough. You've heard me rant about playoffs before. But, it's like you play them week 18. I don't want to play them first round of the playoffs too. That's boring, relatively speaking, as a neutral. It's just, I like to see cross-divisional matchups at the very least. I don't even think you should be allowed to play someone in your own division in the wild card round of the playoff. So I would much rather see the Steelers than Kansas City. And frankly, we've talked ad nauseum about Kansas City's ability to win. Mm-hmm. And I don't want it. I feel like you're going to get a cleaner game with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Whereas with Kansas City, something weird's going to happen. And if you end up losing, the refs do this or Taylor Swift that. I'm like, I don't want the Chiefs. I want the Steelers. I like Mike Tomlin. Mm-hmm. I like Mike Tomlin. I want to watch that. That's the game I want to watch.
I like that defense out there in Pittsburgh as well. They always have really good trench football, front seven. Keep adding to it, and hey, it stays good year by year. Who'd have thought?
We got thanks to Michael already.
Yeah, we did, but always good to say hi to Michael again because he starts and stops shows, right? So we might as well say hello twice. Yep. David coming again over on YouTube. Hope you're doing well, David. Hope things out there in Chicago aren't getting too cold yet. He says, Colts are a hard hat, lunch pail team, and the Broncos must expect their absolute best effort Sunday, 23-20 kind of game. I expect that's not a bad gamble. The thing with the Broncos right now, Scott, and you mentioned it earlier that the defense, you trust the defense, but is it a straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing without Riley Moss in there? Because let me tell you, that game, it could have been just a one-off, of course, but that game against the Browns, Denver finishes 8th best team in the league that week. What is it, week 13, whatever week that was, in EPA per play defense. You get rid of the turnovers, which are a little bit more volatile, especially pick sixes, 2 of them. And Denver finishes, I think, 28th in EPA per play on defenses that week. Now, granted, one game, a lot can happen, but I'm a little bit nervous about the defense and what it looks like. Zach Allen doesn't look like the menace he was before his foot injury. Granted, he has a week to heal, but we'll see how that goes. And now you have Riley Moss not out there. The team tries to play zone defense without him there. They don't look very good in zone. This is a team that's, they can cover the linebackers a little bit more in that situation, it seems like. And then you can hide the cornerback as well. Well, man, zone, Riley Moss is an important piece, and it sounds like we might not have him here for a couple weeks. There's been conflicting information. We'll find out a lot more tomorrow. But I've heard, I think it was Ben Albright put out that don't expect Riley Moss back until the Cincinnati game.
Yeah, and he could have come back if you wanted him to. Yeah, why don't I believe coaches? Because they lie.
Yeah.
Coaches lie so much, they don't call it lying. They call it coach speak. They have given themselves a phrase to cover up all of their lies. So that's just the way it is. It's like a poker game. You're not lying, you're bluffing. Well, that's what is a bluff? It's a lie. Okay, well, it's part of the game.
Yeah.
So is this. I don't trust what they say. I trust what they do. And David, I was reading through this hard hat lunch pail type of team, the Colts. I was like, no, they're not. They're not that anymore, especially this year. They are a turnover prone, big play on both sides of the ball team right now that can't play consistently. That's who they are. So that was what my gut feeling was. Having covered the Colts for a good part of this season, coming into the season especially. And I looked it up. I'm like, yep, sure enough. I mean, they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They are tied for 5th with the Atlanta Falcons with 20 turnovers on the season. They have a sneaky habit of Jonathan Taylor going 20 rushes for 20 yards and then popping up 21 for 80 yards. I'm exaggerating, but Jonathan Taylor's it's an all or nothing type of team. They're either giving up big plays, turning the ball over, getting sacked. So this is a high risk, high reward type of team right now. And Denver's not. You just described the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos are our hard hat, smash you in the mouth, sack your quarterback, don't give up big plays, and be efficient on offense. What's missing right there is the running game part of it. But right now, the short passing game is your extension of the running game. So the hard hat lunch pail team right now, brother, that's the Broncos.
Yeah, they have been. I wish they're a little bit better at rushing the football. The Broncos side of things, they've moved down to like the third quartile. So like they're in the 16 to 22nd range in many metrics. DVOA has them as the 27th best rushing offense in football. So Denver, not a very good rushing team right now. And the Colts are. The Colts are 22nd in DVOA passing, but 14th in the run game. So not great, not terrible either by that. And Denver, they are top 6, I believe, in EPA against the run and success rate. And they are second, according to FTN's DVOA, against the run this season. So the way DVOA works is that it takes the strength of the opponents you're going against in their specific units and then weights them. So Denver's number 1 in EPA per pass. They're dropped down to 8th in pass defense, according to DVOA. So not going against very good passing offenses so far. I don't think we've seen, other than Mahomes and Herbert, I can't think of many superstar quarterbacks, and Jackson, that we played this season. But
the Atlanta Falcons are capable of putting up numbers.
Yeah.
So, Cousins is liable to go for 330 yards. He's just leading the league in interceptions also. So you put this chokehold on a pretty good Falcons passing offense. Even if they're not scoring points, I think they're up to 7th in the league in yards. So they're capable of moving the ball, and they didn't. They didn't, not against this team.
No, they did not. So it's going to be an interesting matchup, and we're going to have a lot of time to go over this preview of the game a lot more coming up. But first, we want to say, I didn't think it did it, Scott. What happened? We've been so good. We've been so good, Scott. Actually, Scott, if you give me 1 second here, I got a call from the pediatrician I got to take here for uno momento. So I'll be right back.
Okay, and this was the wrong time for Nick to go out, but the pediatrician's calling. You better take that because Phil, the story on linebacker Cloyd, I don't know. I don't know much about him, and then I don't think you signed that cornerback. He was in to work out, but I don't believe he was signed yet. I think he was for insurance mostly. But I helped cover the Indianapolis Colts, and this is kind of a weird team. Like I said, they've got talent, and sometimes I think they're overachievers. Sometimes I think they're underachievers. And part of it is Anthony Richardson is so helter-skelter as a quarterback right now that's kind of taken on their team. They've got a lot of talent in the trenches on both sides. They've invested in the wide receiver room. Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman are all very good. They've invested in tight end, but haven't got much out of it. They've drafted corners, but their secondary has just been poor. Their defensive coordinator is under a lot of fire from Colts fans right now. So is their general manager. And I think, with Anthony Richardson, I think he's played about as many pro games now as Bo Nix. I think they've both played 13 professional games, and Anthony Richardson only played one season of college football. So if I'm looking at, who's the rookie out there, it's the Colts quarterback. And when it comes down to, this is a playoff run, I'm on the road. Who do I trust? I mentioned this earlier. I do not trust Anthony Richardson with the game on the line. Not right now. He's just not the guy, and not against the way this Denver Broncos game plays defense. So let me walk through the chat here real quick and see what I can find here. Pearl, it's good to see you. Hope you are doing well. Let me see here. Pro 16K, he likes playing with the NFL playoff machine. He says it's really cool the way I have it worked out. We will be playing the Steelers the way you have it. Now, I think that's probably the most likely. That said, I mentioned on one of the shows, I've done a few of them this week. One of the shows this week, Nick was kind of looking over his shoulder talking about the Colts especially, and I think the Bengals are about done. The Dolphins are still kind of hanging around, but I'm really looking forward. And can you get that number one wild card spot? And then you end up playing probably the Texans, which would be the 4 seed, and you'd be the 5 seed. Because I think that's as probable that you end up overtaking the Chargers, at least for one of those spots. And you've got that one in your own hands. I think you're playing better than the Chargers right now. I've seen the Chargers the last 2 weeks. The Chargers offense is kind of a mess. I mean, the Falcons hold them under to 200 yards, and the Falcons can't play defense. So I think they've had 2 perfect passer ratings against them. One was Bo Nix and one was Sam Darnold. Their defense is horrendous. They held the Chargers under 200 yards. Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston are their 2 top offensive weapons right now, and Ladd's got a hurt shoulder, and Quentin is inconsistent as hell and can hardly catch the ball. Justin Herbert holds on to the ball a little bit too long and takes a bunch of sacks. They got off to a fast start, and the Broncos were a little shell-shocked. It was still this is a young team that is getting better and better. This is a much more mature team than it was even just a month ago. I like the Broncos over the Chargers right now. I don't see any reason why you can't overtake the Chargers. Now, yes, one game at a time, Scott. One game where, the Broncos shouldn't overlook anybody. They're not. The Broncos aren't. I can. We can. We can prognosticate. That's what we're doing. We're not the ones that have to prepare and play the games. And Jeff says, our record against winning teams is abysmal. Our playoff hopes are ugly. What are you talking about, man? As far as playoff hopes are like 90%. Maybe you mean like your hopes in the playoffs, which I can see that. But your record against winning teams at Seahawks, week 1 of the season. All right. First week of the season, you lose that one. Understandable. Week 2, 13-6 against the Steelers. Bo Nix's second game ever. 13-6. You lost that one. Okay. Things look bad. Then they started looking good in a hurry. You beat the hell out of the Buccaneers, winning record. Chargers, winning game, loss. And again, I said that one, this is a different game. That was what, week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That was week 6. We're in week 15 now. 2 months. What has 2 months meant to this team? You beat the Saints, you beat the Panthers, at Ravens, and at Chiefs. It's understandable if you lose those games. It really is. So what happens? You beat the games you're supposed to do, and you're sitting at 8-5, and when you're one of the favorites for the playoffs. And you are a much more mature team capable of playing toe-to-toe. The only one of those games that got out of hand was the Ravens game. And that I said the moment that happened, I said that whole week, we can go back to the Monday, this game was an aberration. It really was. Let's see how they respond, but I expect them to respond. This team has been mentally tough throughout the Sean Payton regime. Even when they've gotten kicked, they've played hard the next week. That if they were ever going to just turn around and quit on a coach, it would have been the Miami game last year. Turn around and play Chicago, and I think that was the game you went down big and came back and won. That showed me a lot. Where you played against the Chiefs, Played them tough on the road in the midst of a 1-5 start. This team has been mentally tough. So Nick is back. Do you know anything about this linebacker Cloyd that Phil references?
I know they brought another linebacker. It makes sense that they're looking for a linebacker. You lost Quan Alexander, and the team is looking for bodies, of course, there to fill in on the practice squad, just to have the reps and everything. And also, you might be running out of elevations for Lavelle Bailey as well, or coming down the track at least. And he's played some special teams also. So I think it's more so that that background there. And Scott, I thought we were doing so well with the camera never having issues here plugged into my actual computer, but it's Tuesday night, so I did want to talk here before we start to wrap up the show. And shout out again, Scott, for holding that. I've been dealing with a sick kid, and of course the call at noon, and they don't call me until 5:30 my time. But it's that time of year, right? The holidays are chaos, but. Wanted to shout out to Dylan Von Arx. He wrote an article on the power rankings this week for the Broncos. Broncos up to 10 overall in the NFL, Scott. Who'd have thought? Preseason, I mean, what's Broncos going to be picking 1 overall after the 0-2 start? I know, Lord, I thought they were going to be picking top 5. But here you are, 10 overall. But there are some questions for the Broncos from this article from Eric Edholm, I believe, NFL.com.
Yep, Edholm. Yeah, he does. He was going to say he does the power rankings, but that's where it actually was.
Yes, exactly.
Those were the power rankings.
So he had the Broncos 10 overall. I think they were 1 behind the Chargers maybe, but I digress. He had 2 questions for the Broncos, and we talked about one of these ones, Scott, earlier. Can this Broncos defense figure out what they're going to do without Riley Moss? Now, expectations are Riley Moss is going to be back this season, but it doesn't sound like, I know that when the injury happened in the Raiders game, post-game, Sean Payton mentioned like, oh yeah, he might have even been able to go back out there. Well,
which is why he doesn't like talking about injuries, because now he looks like, either dishonest or dumb, which he doesn't like being either one of those things.
No, definitely not.
Well, he doesn't mind being dishonest, but, that's why I don't want to talk about injuries. You got me talking about injuries, and now look what happened.
Yep. Yeah, so we're out without Riley Moss. I can't imagine that Levi Wallace is going to be playing, so that leads to Chris Abrams-Drain, 5th-round rookie from Mizzou. He had some pretty good tape out there. He was the second of the 2 Mizzou cornerbacks. Enos Rakestraw was number 1 coming out last year. He went 2nd round to the Lions. I think he had suffered a season-ending injury, but Chris Abrams-Drain had a Lions, man, they're dropping apart on defense. Crazy. But Chris Abrams-Drain had a pretty good season. I remember that LSU game specifically was great. The big concern with him, he had a good preseason for the Broncos as well. The big concern with him, Scott, is that he is a small man for the cornerback position. And he's sitting here with 179 pounds overall for the cornerback position, which 179, that doesn't sound too small. That's 7th percentile for cornerback, Scott. So he's small. And with that,
it's not that small until you think of the guys you have to tackle, which most of the running backs. And again, to get to your point, Nick, and then I'll take it back since I interrupted you, is we know his position is in position to tackle a lot because Riley Moss was leading the team, was 2nd on the team in tackles for so long. So there's a lot coming to the outsides.
Yes, there is. And especially against a team like the Colts, you're going to have to tackle Jonathan Taylor. You're going to have to tackle the quarterback. You're going to have to tackle Alec Pierce, who's a monster. Michael Pittman, who's gigantic for that team. They like to run a lot of 12 personnel with double tight ends. There's going to be tackling. You're going to put your secondary in position where they're going to have to get one-on-ones and make the play. That's something that Jaquan McMillan's been awesome at this season. Tackling Riley Moss has been good at it. Patrick Surtain, this Broncos secondary, you cannot blitz and play man as much as the Broncos do without your guys in the secondary being awesome tacklers. And not saying that Chris Abrams-Drain can't be fine there, but I don't think the tackling in college was phenomenal. And also just given his size, it's a concern. So who can step up? Obviously, we did not see Damari Mathis out there. I think he only got 4 or so snaps in that last game. Maybe that changes coming off the bye week. I can't imagine they're going to go with Levi Wallace again. So Chris Abrams-Drain watch, we're on watch for him right now. And I just worry most about the size for him. It's a reason he fell to the 5th round. He's also not a incredible athlete for the position. He's fine. But again, fell to the 5th round at playing a premium position. That's kind of what you're expecting. So interesting game. I'm curious to see how the Broncos will try to compensate for that, how they try to protect him. Are they going to go more zone? I mean, this has been much more of a cover 3 zone team compared to cover 2, cover 4, cover 6. Are they going to go with man and just, live with the results? This is a very different Colts team passing attack than it was from the Jameis Winston and the Browns as well. So a little different there. Just don't get beat deep, right? Make him beat you underneath and then rally to the ball. But it's going to be an interesting matchup.
That's where they can present problems. Is you want to get up tight on the receivers and make Anthony Richardson make accurate throws, but if they get behind you, you're in trouble because a kid can throw it 150 yards. I mean, and he can buy time, and he's strong and he's mobile. And yes, I want to make them complete passes in front of me. I think that'll be the game plan. I think this will be a little bit softer than what we've seen from your defensive backs.
I love that, Scott. I'm with you on that. And also, I think it needs to be more aggressive on the defensive line. I think that you need to be sending bodies up front because I know that makes you're a little bit scary there in terms of giving up the explosives, but I'm sending runs, especially on early downs, to create those negatives. I want to be creating chaos at the what do you call it? The mesh point in the RPO exchanges. And I want to be creating negative runs because the Colts, I don't think in true drop back pass sets, Anthony Richardson can get it done. But pinning the ears back, making it 3rd and long, that's a good matchup for us. The other one,
since he was benched, Nick, he's run the ball twice as much. So they benched him. You know, he pulled himself out of a game and said, I was tired, and then sat the next 2 weeks. Came back in, and he's run the ball almost, I think, 7.5 times a game since he's been back. So, and that's the thing. But it's hard to run against bodies, and Vance Joseph will commit bodies to the box. And I think it's in good shape. And again, which means I want to be up on the receivers. I don't want to give them the wide receiver screen and stuff as a short passing game and to let them spread it out. But you cannot trust your front 7 to take care of Richardson. If it feels like you've been covering a little too long, cover more anyway. If Richardson breaks free, that's the front 7's fault. That's their problem. I'd rather give up 20 than be Brandon Jones or PJ Locke and cheat into the backfield thinking, okay, I got to go get Anthony Richardson, and then he chucks the ball 70 yards downfield. So it's almost, I'll live with the 20-yard run if that's what happens with Anthony Richardson.
It'll be interesting to follow, no doubt. The other part of Eric Edholm's article is something that I don't know if it's going to be solved this season, Scott, and it might end up being the Achilles heel for this team when if they finally get knocked out, they don't win the Super Bowl. You know, you never know. Crazy things happen. But it's the running back position, and it's the running game for Denver. He talks about, just kind of Denver has had 5 different leading rushers this season. Yes, and the Beatty, Nix, Williams.
I was like, who else? It was Tyler Bidet. That's right.
Bidet. Yes, excuse me. Yes, Tyler Bidet. So that is an interesting one, no doubt, for the Broncos. And I don't think it's going to be solved this year, Scott. I think that what's going on isn't working. I thought that we saw some good from Audric Estime in that Chiefs game. He's been kind of banished since then. So we're not in the film room. We're not in the meetings, the practice or anything. So maybe there's something else going on there. McLaughlin looked really good against the Browns. So maybe they just lean into that. I mean, can McLaughlin get 20 carries a game and hold up? We got 4 games left. It's not about holding up for an undrafted free agent.
But, yeah, I mean, like, who are your running backs? I mean, not by names, but by acquisition. Who are your running backs? Second-round pick who had a devastating knee injury.
Yep.
5th-round pick and 2 undrafted free agents. Am I surprised that the running back room isn't great? No. Am I surprised at how well the wide receivers are playing based on a similar type of acquisition?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a pleasant surprise. You expected more out of the tight end room based on the investment there. A 3rd-round pick in Greg Dulcich is a premium pick for a tight end, and it didn't work out. No. But there hasn't been a lot of investment in the running back room, and that's where the dead cap and the lack of picks come in. That's going to get fixed this offseason. It's absolutely going to get fixed, at least addressed. It will be addressed in a big way with resources this season.
Yeah. And luckily it's going to be, we talked about it on Monday morning, it's going to be a great draft for running backs for the Broncos. I want them to take 2. Which sounds crazy, but does that mean McLaughlin isn't on the roster anymore or Audric Estime? Have either,
Maybe.
are you happy with the running back room right now? No,
Yeah.
compete, right? Like, it's good luck. You don't like getting replaced. Don't want to replace you. We haven't seen enough so far from any of them. So maybe that's harsh, but I don't know. I've kind of more of a recruiting mentality. I'm trying to find somebody to take your job.
No, your
You don't like
job
that?
as a general manager is to replace you, and your job as a player is to make myself worth more than you're paying me. That's my job as an employee, basically. Am I earning more than you're paying me? If so, then my job's pretty safe.
Yeah, absolutely. We got Brandon Williams coming in, says, how much quarterback spy do you guys think we'll see this week? I think we might see some, but honestly, I'm so interested in muddying the pocket and creating chaos and creating negative plays in the run game that I'm not as concerned with quarterback spy. And also, like, do we actually have the athlete at linebacker where you're like, oh yeah, he can play catch up in close space?
Who's catching Richardson from a linebacker?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean,
might be Brandon Jones.
Brandon Jones is
might
up
sneak
there.
A guy up.
Yeah, he's decent. Cody Barton's actually an okay athlete, but he's not Anthony Richardson level athlete. And Justin Sternad is not that athlete.
Very few are, to be fair. Yeah. I mean, Anthony Richardson, if you put him, I think I was doing this when he was coming out. I put him at like 7 or 8 different positions in relative athletic score, and he was a perfect 10. I mean, he's special athletically, but he's erratic as hell throwing the ball. And at the end of the day, in this league, you got to be able to throw the football accurately. So Brandon, instead of a spy, I think you attack. You know, I think there's a cloud. You know, we're gonna let them set the pocket and then collapse it around him and just make sure he doesn't beat you wide. And if he does, that's fine. It's gonna happen. Be dang sure he's beyond the line of scrimmage before you commit out of the backside, because his highlight throws are scramble bombs. Those are Russell Wilson plus. This is a bigger, stronger, faster Russell Wilson with less accuracy underneath. That's who he's playing right now.
I mean, the comp is like rookie year Josh Allen, where it's just like chaos merchant, right. And the accuracy's really scattershot, but like he's got a gun and he's a huge athlete, right? Yep. So it doesn't mean he's going to end up figuring it all out, but and he's going to also put the ball in harm's way some. I did appreciate.
He can't take the punishment away. I mean, bang on him. The guy hadn't finished half the games he started, literally.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, so bang on him a little bit.
Yep, hit him. Body blows. I mean, nothing dirty, of course, but hit him, and that's why as you mentioned there, the spy not as interested. Send that guy. Get multiple bodies to him too, because he's strong. He can break out of tackles. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, this bringing it back to Eric Edholm's piece and Dylan's good job writing it for Mile High Huddle. The running back position. I think the move I would make would be Estime early down, sprinkled in with McLaughlin, and then you have Javonte Williams as your third down back, because he's your best pass catcher out of them, and he's definitely your best pass protector out of that group. It's not going to be dynamic. It's not going to be special. It's not going to give you a top 10 rushing offense this season, but Denver's rushing offense is not palatable for winning games for having a rookie quarterback right now. I mean, the average yards to go on third down have risen. It's worse. And I just think it's, well, granted, there are benefits to this offense in Bo Nix. You have Sean Payton designing things, best pass protecting offensive line in football. What they're doing at the run game has not been beneficial enough, especially as of late. It's been dreadful here ever since the Falcons game gave us hope, but after that, it's been horrible on the ground game for the Broncos. So we'll see what happens there, but need to figure out something in the running back position. It's not good right now.
Yeah, you're not going to get to rush against too many prevent defenses in the first quarter like you do against the Atlanta Falcons. So that's like we said after that game, that was don't think of that as the norm, because the Falcons are doing stuff on defense that nobody does in a positive way. And they've changed since then, since the bye. You're like, they're playing more legit 3-4s. Oh my God, how revolutionary. So yes, I mean, I guess we have time where we can do a pick tomorrow. So, we'll hit on that tomorrow, but the questions, running back. Yes, we know. And depth in the secondary. Yes, we know. And the fact that these are your bigger questions week 14, as you're looking at a playoff bid, it's been a fantastic season for this team.
Yeah. And I think if you would have told us before the season started that we're at where we're at and we've seen enough from as much as we have from Bo Nix, granted, we don't have every single question answered, but enough, we'd be ecstatic. Unfortunately, I do think unfortunately, the expectations change as you see the team, right? It is such a week by week league, and that's true for the players, it's true for the coaches, it's true for the fans as well. So now it would be devastating for the Broncos if they didn't make the playoffs, considering what we've seen this year, just how much of a lead they have in the AFC. But this is going to be a huge game for them. We're going to talk a lot more about it tomorrow morning with the Broncos for breakfast, talking Colts Broncos, and we'll get our predictions in as well. Like I said earlier, Broncos 4.5-point favorites. And they're going to have to answer those questions. A good Eric Edholm's article, the running back room for the Broncos, how they can run the ball a little bit more efficiently. I'm guessing that's got to be a huge point of emphasis for Sean Payton. I think we all have to be pretty happy about the offensive line and the pass protection, but the run blocking and the running backs in general, the tight ends blocking as well, have not been nearly good enough. So that's going to be a point of emphasis, obviously in the bye week, but also this offseason. And getting Riley Moss back healthy. I do think that, fortunately, Scott, if I could pick any of the next 4 games, if I had to pick like 2 games out of the next 4 where Riley Moss wasn't going to be there, it would probably be the Chargers as well as the Colts, just because I think I respect the hell out of Justin Herbert. They don't really have good pass catchers right now. Will Dissly got hurt. Ladd McConkey's awesome, but he's been dealing with injury.
He got hurt too. He missed the last game after hurting his shoulder in Atlanta.
Yep. And outside of that, I mean, not great. And then you have the Bengals, which Lord knows what they'll be at that point, but that's a top 5 passing offense, top 3 passing offense in the league. And then the Colts or the Chiefs, which who knows at that point, but might be a huge game. It won't
surprise me a bit to see the Buccaneers beat the Chargers this weekend.
I bet you the Chargers are 1.5 favorites. That's where my thumb would be right now. But I wouldn't be surprised either.
They're 3. They're 3 right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, but I won't be surprised to see Tampa beat the Chargers right now. I think the Chargers they're fading. They're not charging. They're fading, and that's a lot of that has to do with injuries. I'm not hating on the Chargers by any stretch. I like what Jim Harbaugh is doing with them. I just think that the injuries are hampering them, and they're not peaking. They're fading late in the season.
Yep. And we got Michael, before we get on out of here, says, great show tonight, Nick and Scott, on building the Broncos. Go Bo Broncos. Thank you so much, Michael. Also, I see a comment in here from Pro 16. I think it's Doug here. Says, there's a scenario where we lose to Indy and still make the playoffs and we get to play Pitt.
Yeah,
that scenario is
3-1 and beat the Chargers.
That is possible. I do not want to be in that situation, though, because it's pretty hard from that point to make it. You drop to 51%, and you almost have no margin for error at that point. If you beat the Colts, you have a chance to go 0-3 and still make the playoffs. But if you go 1-2, I think there's almost no scenario after beating the Colts where you don't make the playoffs. It doesn't even matter who you play. Now, granted, do you want to have the 7th seed and head to Buffalo? Not exactly, but more than anything, want to make the playoffs. So we'll look a little bit more in these scenarios when they come. Obviously, the Dolphins have some interesting games. That Houston game could be pretty big. I do think there's a reality, Scott, where on Sunday, the Broncos clinch the playoff spot there. If they beat the Colts and the Dolphins lose to the Texans, I think Denver's in that scenario. I think it's over. So the top 7 seeds. Now, which seed they get, TBD. But we'll see. Denver just needs to take care of business, and figuring out the running backs and figuring out something for Riley Moss while he's gone is going to be huge. So any final thoughts, Scott, before we're live again in 12 hours?
No, come see us on Broncos for breakfast. Think of the questions you might have. I saw Pearl said she hadn't heard of Anthony Richardson before today, and that's okay. He was a number 4 overall pick and was a project and got hurt in week 4 last year and missed the rest of the season with a shoulder injury. So came back, got benched, and is still uber athletically talented, but he is erratic. So that's who Anthony Richardson is. He'll do some stuff. If you put together just a 2-minute highlight play of him, of his top plays, you say there's the best player in the NFL. But you could also put together a 10-minute lowlights of him missing wide open guys or doing that type of stuff. And that's who he is right now. So looking forward to seeing y'all tomorrow. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. Appreciate you hanging out with us.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you, of course, to David Mickelrath, David Carmelo, Ralph coming in here, Michael Roncu a few times. Always good to see Phil McLaughlin as well. Brandon Williams, appreciate all you guys coming in and hanging out with us. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott's at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendall. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, we're over at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as that ticker says there underneath, if you're joining us on YouTube, that's where most of you guys do. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share. We will see you guys again tomorrow morning. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. It's kind of weird with the bye week. Appreciate all you guys. Have a great rest of your night. Go Broncos.